Um, as a salary developer, your salary is set by the company. There's little room for negotiation at the junior and entry level. Um, the, so because there is so much competition in the field, especially at the junior and entry level, a lot of the growth that you see in the industry is actually for mid-level and senior level developers, which require multiple years of experience. So essentially what happens is you sort of have this bottleneck in the industry where there are only so many jobs and a bunch of people who are sort of applying to them. And because of that, it becomes largely a buyer's market. So these companies that are employing developers will, sort of set your salary. It will be, larger than the median salary. It'll be likely more than what you're making now, but it may be depressed due to the number of candidates out there, especially at the entry junior level. So if you do get a number back from a company, there's often very little wiggle room with that. And then each company has its own culture, which may not be a good fit for you. And that it could be a number of different things, be it work-life balance. Some companies might have you work 50, 60 hours. Obviously, that doesn't really help with work-life balance. If you have a family, children, that sort of thing, excuse me, it may not be something that's a good fit for you. There's definitely companies where management is more hands-on or more hands-off. There are companies that will make sure that you sit in a desk every single hour. They want you to be in a seat from 9 to 5. They it's very some jobs are very regimented like that. And again, each company has their own culture. And coming out of a boot camp or a self-study or a degree program, you're not going to have sort of your pick of the litter when it comes to culture. Odds are you'll get one, maybe two offers just sort of starting out, and you'll have to deal with whatever culture is sort of presented to you. So that's definitely something that you want to sort of be aware of when you do take a job with a salaried developer. Sort of starting off at the bottom, it's much more difficult to try to find a company that's the best fit for you. Your tasks and responsibilities can change based on the need of the company. Um, so yeah, you may be hired as a front end developer working on sort of the client side of sites and projects, and you may end up doing something completely different. You may be doing more back end stuff. You might be doing more QA stuff. You might be doing integration or DevOps or several different things. There's a reason. That's part of the reason why certain job titles have the wording software engineer, because it often has multiple roles sort of attached to it. And it makes it easier for a company to sort of delineate tasks towards you as needed. So again, and it's ultimately based on the needs and the duties of the company, things that the company needs. So you might be wearing several different hats. Definitely, if you work in the startup space, you will be wearing multiple different hats. A lot of startups have less than a dozen or so employees, and it's expected for you to sort of hit the ground running and do many different tasks, a lot of which you may not necessarily be comfortable doing or may not have the knowledge base for. And it's also easy to get pigeonholed in a certain role. So if nobody at your company likes doing QA, and you got signed on to be a front end developer and you managed to do some QA for them, you might be pigeoned into QA, and it'll make it difficult for you to sort of find that next job where if you don't like doing QA or whatever task they assign to you that you weren't hired for, it makes it more difficult to sort of break out of that role. So definitely something to sort of consider there. Um, Salaries often don't go considerably higher over a period of time, which promotes job hopping. So again, once you're hired at a certain salary, depending on the company, obviously companies vary, but there is a certain mindset in this industry where you work for a company for a year or two, then jump to another company, work for a year or two, then jump to another company to sort of get those increases in salary, because largely the companies will sort of try to lock you in at whatever salary that you have for a company. And that's something that you should definitely sort of take note of. And job hopping isn't easy, especially the first or second time that you do it. It's definitely something that you will have more of an issue with, or rather less of an issue with as time goes by. But once you leave your first job, it's almost as difficult to find your second job as it was the first. So it's definitely something to sort of think about. Job hopping is not as easy as some people make it out to be, even with experience. There's a lot of different things that will sort of hinder you as far as that goes. But yeah, that's definitely something to consider as well. Your title may not reflect your duties. So again, I touched on that before, but you may be a front end developer, do back end work. You might be a back end developer, do QA work. You whatever role that you were hired to do may not be what you actually do in a role. And if your aim is to sort of pursue a career in a certain discipline, be it front end, back end, UI, UX, whatever it is, that's definitely going to hinder your goals as far as sort of reaching those career goals and sort of meeting them. Most salary positions are not remote. So currently with COVID, a lot of them are, but that will be temporary when this all hopefully gets sorted out. These positions will go back to being, sort of your traditional sit-in 9 to 5 office job, especially at the junior and entry level. I don't think I've ever seen a position that hires an entry or junior level developer right out of boot camp or school or self study to a remote position. It's extremely rare. So that's definitely something that if that's a concern for you, that's something to take note of as well. Salary positions normally don't do remote for junior and entry level. For mid senior, that option is there. But again, it's definitely one of those things that you sort of accrue with experience. So once you sort of become a mid or senior developer and sort of prove yourself at a company, then you might be able to get sort of those remote privileges. But just starting out, they are not remote. I don't think I've ever seen an entry level or junior level position that is fully remote. Relocating for a job is the norm for those not in a booming tech area. So if you don't live in New York or the Bay Area or Chicago or any area that has a big sort of booming tech industry, it's going to be difficult for you to find a job where you are at. There's definitely companies everywhere these days, but if you don't sort of cast a wide net when searching for a job and you aren't open to relocation, it'll definitely take you a far greater time to sort of find those positions. And again, going back to most positions are not remote. A lot of these jobs will have you move out to wherever it is, whether it be the Bay Area, New York, or Chicago, or any tech hub. That's definitely something that will be required of you if you do get a salary position. And if you have family, if you have obligations, if you can't sort of move from where you are, that'll definitely make finding a job a great deal difficult. Your skills can get stale, which makes it harder when switching jobs. So again, when you sort of find your first position, it definitely won't be the ideal position. It definitely won't be sort of position that it's rare for any company, even the big FANG companies like Facebook, Amazon, to use sort of bleeding edge technologies. A lot of tech companies have legacy code, and that's essentially using older technologies, and a lot of the job of developer is to sort of maintain that legacy code, especially for older companies. So you may be working in a stack that isn't as widely used. You might be learning technologies that may not necessarily be applicable to your next position, and that may not be relevant in the current marketplace. There's still, for those any of you that know what COBOL or Lisp is, there are still positions out there for COBOL and Lisp, and those technologies are fairly outdated, and they essentially are still around because the code base is so big and it costs more to sort of replace all that code with something more current than it would be to just hire developers to maintain that legacy code. So definitely something to consider there, that your skills can get stale, and when you sort of go into the job market from your sort of current position, your skills may not be up to date. And also, in addition, work-life balance isn't always guaranteed. So again, depending on the needs of the company, if 2 or 3 developers leave and you're still with the company, you'll definitely be expected to step up, contribute more hours than you've already sort of contributed. I would definitely say that that's something that is sort of common with a lot of companies. And even if you start out with a company that has a decent work-life balance and you do the 9 to 5, there definitely be situations where you definitely need to sort of put your nose to the grindstone and try to put in a bunch of you put in more hours to sort of implement that. So again, work-life balance is not guaranteed as a salaried developer.